Hello, welcome to this museum moment. We are really excited to have you here today to join us as we celebrate the end of summer by looking at something that was a big part of summer in Wisconsin that has now changed and transitioned. And I know it's interesting because we posted this yesterday as a Facebook Live when we're talking about summer resorts and all of these things. And we got a pretty good response. People said Gone Rings on Big Cedar Lake. We have another one, Nippersink Manor in Genoa City. Zebelmans Pine Terrace. Today we are talking about Zebelmans Pine Terrace, but those other two aren't represented today. But it just means maybe in the future we'll have to do another museum moments about summer resorts and, kind of that history, get into it a little bit deeper. Today we're going to do a little bit of a survey. And we're going to start by thinking about this idea of vacation at all. What does it mean to have vacation? What does it mean to have summer vacation? All of that is a relatively new invention that is led to by some degree of affluence and some degree of understanding that in order for people to be effective employees, they also need a break. This is, one of the things that the labor movement comes out in a couple of weeks. Or next week, actually, we're going to be celebrating Labor Day and exploring kind of the labor movement and in Milwaukee. But the idea of having vacation and taking vacation in the summer, that in some ways is reflective of this idea that we are no longer an agrarian society that is wholly dependent on the cycle of the season. And as you're doing manufacturing or these other things, that maybe you would be more productive if you had a break. And actually, William Taft, who is seated here, he's most famously wrongly known as being the president who was stuck in a bathtub. But in this case, this is a legacy that I think we should all celebrate. He actually, in 1910, tried to introduce the idea of having a 2 to 3 month vacation period, that all American workers would be given 2 to 3 months off to rest and relax. And this is actually an article that appeared in the New York Times kind of questioning this. You have a bunch of different business leaders from all sorts of different fields talking about what they think. Several of them take the, vacation's really important, and others say vacation's very important for me, but for those lower class folk, they don't really need it. They wouldn't understand what to do with leisure time. So you get both sides of this. Sadly, President Taft was not successful in this endeavor. And vacation in America has always been this thing that was a little bit of what you get from your specific employer. Still to this day, that's the case. There is no mandated, this is how much vacation any one person should have. So we're going to there are all sorts of reasons why vacation becomes more a part of American life. One is the fact that, and especially within the Jewish immigrant groups that we're talking about today, they climbed the ladder. They had more money to spend on things. They became more successful from those early peddling days to, light manufacturing, to opening stores, to having actual disposable income. That enabled people to get away. That was one of the pieces that enabled that kind of transition. The other thing is that there is a big change in not just our status quo, but also the ability to go places. The advent of the car, trains, made it so that you could get places that had previously been, several days by cart or, a very long day on a horse and wagon, you could get to in a couple of hours, and it was a reasonable thing to do for a week or a weekend. And even actually one of the things that was popular before vacation became popular amongst immigrant Jews was the idea of going for a Sunday drive somewhere and having a dinner or having a picnic. And this is how the Zebelmans Pine Terrace, that they got their start. Zebelmans Pine Terrace Resort is on Fowler Lake in Oconomowoc. Oconomowoc was at one point known, and maybe still, as Newport of the Midwest. It is a 19-room house. I'll say that again. This house that we are looking at right now is a 19-room house. And it was built in the 1800s by a guy named Henry Schuttler, by he and his brother, for his bride, Maria Anheuser. You guys know that name from the beer fame. She is from that family. And this was supposed to be kind of a wedding present. The name of the house was initially Mon Bijou, my jewel. And this was one of these things I found. A lot of this research came to us from Jody Starren, who did this research for AN or for Jewish Historical Society newsletter. And she says tragedy strikes. So I looked everywhere to see if I could figure out what sort of tragedy struck Maria Anheuser-Schuttler in her life, and I couldn't find it. But she sold in the 1920s, and it went through a very quick succession of owners. But one of these, the Mertzes, established it as a resort, and Sam and Annette Zebelman visited it, and they came to an agreement with the Mertzes, who had previously owned it, that the Mertzes would stay on and help them transition, and the Zebelmans would take over the resort itself. And interestingly, they bought this in 1928. Sam Zebelman, aside from being the owner and proprietor of Zebelman's Prime Terrace Resort, also was kind of a central Yiddish scholar in Milwaukee. He was the editor of the Jewish Forward's Milwaukee page, which this was news to me. I didn't know the Jewish Forward had a Milwaukee page. He also had weekly radio broadcasts on 2 different radio stations in Yiddish. So really fun facts about Zebelman. They expanded what had been, a small resort based in the house to 150 cottages on the 150-acre property. They expanded a meal service. This is, I think, what we think about when we think about kind of Catskills type entertainment, that you have 3 meals a day and the food is plentiful. And there were all sorts of famous people who came to Zebelmans. Some of the most famous residents are local legend, who my colleague Molly Dubin talked about, Charlotte Ray, née Lubotsky. Also, Saul Bellow stayed there. And Daniel Hone did as well. Sam Zebelman died in 1959, but Annette kept the property running until the 1980s. There were slow and gradual changes where the food was no longer part of your room and board, that it was just you came and you stayed, you brought your own food. And in the 80s, she sold the property. The cabins were changed. I don't think they're there anymore, but you can still stay at this actual house in Oconomowoc. It remains Pine Terrace Resort. It is a bed and breakfast today. So this one was large and people went for many, many years. Rosenheimers is another one of these resorts. And this is an image from the Wisconsin Historical Society's collection. This is a postcard. I love it. I think it's so beautiful. It was initially organized in West Bend. Actually, it's kind of West Bend, Slinger, in that kind of vicinity. And Slinger was founded by a guy named Baruch Schlesinger Wheel. And this hotel was initially founded by Baruch Schlesinger Wheel's children. One of the things, they were very connected. They actually had a railway station constructed to go to Cedar Lake so that people could come directly there. 2,300 people came to Big Cedar Lake in 1915. And if you just think about how big these towns are, 2,300 people at that time had to be a massive influx of people. The station was destroyed in 1926 in a fire and was not reconstructed. The property was bought by John Rosenheimer in 1893, and he really expanded the hotel and its potential. They were famous for their dance hall and their kind of big band music that would come through. Louis Armstrong played Rosenheimers. I mean, it's hard to imagine Louis Armstrong in West Bend, but Louis Armstrong, among many other big names in the big band world, played there. And this dance hall could hold 1,400 people. The hotel burned down in 1931, and there were many redevelopments of this. The tavern and dance hall kind of continued in through the 1950s. And in the 1950s, the property was sold to the Cedar Lake Yacht Club, which still continues to use it for a number of things. The last resort I'm going to talk about, and actually this is the train schedule for Cedar Lake that I was just talking to you. So you can see Cedar Lake and Schlesingerville. It's before World War I. This brochure is from, because it's still Schlesingerville and not Slinger. They changed the name in World War I, during World War I, because it sounded too German. The last of the places I want to talk about is Schwartz's. This place was developed in the 1800s. And Elkhart Lake, where Schwartz's is located, was becoming this kind of booming vacation capital. And it attracted all sorts of different people. All of these places had clientele from Milwaukee, but many of them also were very popular amongst Chicagoans. This attracted William Schwartz to buy 30 acres on the lake. He sold to his brother. He expanded. He changed. He kept going. Elkhart Lake is just booming in this kind of vacation world. And at this point, a $3,000 opera house is built. It has a number of different owners, but just outside of the Schwartz family, but they maintain this name, the Schwartz name. One of the things that's interesting about many of these places is that they had some sort of casino. Rosenheimers, too, had slot machines, but Schwartz's had an active casino in their resort until World War II, when there started to be some cracking down on gambling in the state. And it operated, I think, kind of, when you hear the descriptions, this is what I picture, Catskills in Wisconsin, where you have your activities director who's running bingo and dances for young people and dances for older people and shuffleboard, and they're swimming and boating and all of these different things that are going on in a given day, and so much food that every meal is just food upon food upon food. And it sounds like a great way to spend a summer. And there were many people in Milwaukee who would go for the whole summer and spend the summer with, their family, and husbands might go back and forth, but you might just be there for the summer and hang out and have your kind of, lake country experience and experience all the different things that the resort has to offer. So I would love to have that kind of break. I think we all would. So we'll all go back and think if we can mobilize to get Taft's 2 to 3 month vacation policy enacted. But until then, I'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday with our museum moments. So thank you so much for joining me. Next on Thursday, we're going to continue our exploration of Wisconsin with Andy Mushin and explore his research through the Wisconsin Society for Jewish Learning on small Jewish communities in Wisconsin. So this is the time for all of you Sheboyganites, you Manitowockians. I just killed that. All of you people from these kind of small Jewish communities, throw your memories up on the message board. I'll put this up soon. And I've so enjoyed this. If you've liked this or any of our museum moments, please feel free to go to jewishmuseummilwaukee.org, and you can thank us, show your appreciation any way you want. Have a great day.